If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. And the website didn't crash. It was just going really, 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 really slowly. Oh, more mistruths from this fairy tale that's happened after the fairy tale election. Coming up next on Get Right with Lenny McAllister, starting right
now. Get Right with Lenny McAllister.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
The way we help bring back America and we build the bridges and bring people together is by making sure we hold everybody accountable in a 360 fashion.
So let me close with this. Yes, there is a change that we can believe in, but it will never come from a politician or a government program.
We cannot find physical sanity here in the land of Lincoln, from Carbondale to Elgin, that we can collectively continue to tolerate the insanity found on the streets of South Chicago and East Texas of Florida.
We got to move away from the American Idol soundbite nature of politics and back to the American statesman of humble servant leadership that we used to see in politics.
It is time to roll out the era of the new, educated, engaged, and energized American citizen.
I go do the jail ministry. I speak to the kids in the streets. So I'm never going to lay down being conservative just as much as I'll never lay down being a proud African American.
I feel like a black republic. Money I got coming in. Can't turn my back on the hood. I got love for them. Can't clean my act because too much thugging them. Probably in the back.
You know, as we start another wonderful episode of Get Right with Lenny McAllister, you and me talking here, imbibing back and forth on Twitter, on Facebook, enjoying the podcast courtesy of LennyMcAllister.com. As we, and again, you know the Twitter name, it's LennyMcAllister. The Facebook, you know where to find me, tinyurl.com/Lenny page. And, you know, it's kind of hard to determine who's losing, and let's just jump right into it. Who's losing the debate, the argument, who's losing the I was right, you were wrong back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats, because every single time you think that the Republican Party is going away and they have done something to so damage the Republican brand that there's no possible way that they can win nationally in an even year election, where there's no way they can hold on to the House of Representatives, there's no way that they can get ahead and possibly mount any type of momentum for 2016, you find out that, in fact, the Democrats are losing. And if you listen to the soundbite from the president at the beginning of the podcast, if you listen to that soundbite by President Barack H. Obama, 44th President of the United States, what he repeated over and over and over and over again is that if you like your doctor, you're going to keep your doctor, period. If you liked your health care plan, you would keep your health care plan, period, under the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, under Obamacare, under his leadership with health care reform. That just is not happening. Now, couple that with other wonderful, fanciful misstatements, we'll call them, fairy tales, if you will. And it's kind of ironic because it really was a fairy tale, how President Obama came into power in 2008. Here's a guy that, and I've said it previously on podcast, 5 years prior to being president-elect, he was an obscure state senator from Illinois that was running against at least, 3 or 4 other contenders, including Gary Chico, who ended up running against Rahm Emanuel for the mayor's post in Chicago in 2011. Lost there, too. So here's this obscure state senator that got thrashed by Bobby Rush, congressman from the 1st Congressional District in Illinois, who, former Black Panther, former alderman in Chicago, hasn't had a very illustrious career in the House of Representatives. I love him as a child of God. Had an opportunity to meet him previously on more than one occasion. But not somebody that was, really on the vanguard of things. He put on a hoodie in 2012. That was cool. I mean, to a lot of people, they thought that was great. Hooray. But that's not necessarily being on the vanguard, if you will. So he got thrashed by that person in 2000. Okay? He comes around 3 years later. He's an obscure state senator running for U.S. Senate. Wins the nomination, is behind in the polls in 2004 until a sex scandal hits the Republican Party in Illinois. Before there was sexting and texting and tweeting and all the other jazz, because that wasn't just Anthony Weiner. It caught both sides. And Mr. Ryan can tell you about that in Illinois. So you got that in 2004. He runs against Alan Keyes. He wins the race in November 2004. And then he doesn't even spend a full senatorial term in the U.S. Senate. Next thing you know, he wasn't even in there for 2 full years as far as being inaugurated into the Senate, being sworn in, I should say, before the next thing you know, he's running for the presidency. Then he ends up beating a guy that had spent almost 40 years in the Senate, in Joe Biden, ends up beating a former First Lady, Hillary Clinton, ends up beating a guy that's been in Congress for over 30 years. John McCain, and becomes president. So, yes, in many, many regards, it was a fairy tale how this gentleman, who was raised in Hawaii without his biological parents for the most part, could come to the mainland, straighten his grades up, because he wasn't the best student, and he, had a history of smoking some doobies and some other things, apparently. Straightened himself up, went to Columbia, went to Harvard Law, and did all the stuff that you know about that he did in school, and ends up becoming the 44th president of the United States, the first African-American president of the United States. Wife grew up on the south side of Chicago, working class family. First urban-based president. I mean, all these things definitely made this fairy tale a reality for America. And at the time, and I still say it, the story is powerful for American children, powerful for African-American children, powerful for urban-based children, powerful for poor children, powerful for children that come from non-traditional families. So it's ironic that all these fairy tales about the Obamacare website working, not working, crashing, not crashing, really being up, just going really, really slow, all the fairy tales that are being thrown about, I didn't really mean that you wouldn't have to change your plan. I didn't really mean that you would absolutely keep your doctor and absolutely keep your plan, because I can't tell the insurance companies what to do, and there's no possible way, according to Jay Carney, there's no possible way that we could have responsibly foreseen that these changes would have had to have come about because of the legislation that we put in place that we were working on since 2009, and we hammered into place in 2010, and we've been building out since 2010 and hoping that the Supreme Court would not overturn this healthcare reform, which is why we were happy that they called it a tax and not a mandate. Because if it's a mandate, it doesn't pass, but as a tax, it stays in law. So we had 4 years to study this, to build this from a technical standpoint, from a bureaucratic standpoint, from a legal standpoint. We had other models, because we keep talking about Romney Care. We had other models to look back on, but we could not responsibly say that you would keep your doctor, you would keep your plan. We could not responsibly say that in 2013, although the President of the United States said it in 2009, and 2010, and 2011, and 2012, which included a presidential campaign run, a midterm election where he was on the campaign trail, trying to help Craig Deeds, I think his name was, in Virginia win the gubernatorial race in 2009. He completely gave up on New Jersey, even though he tried that for a second in 2009. I can tell you he was trying to help Alexei Janulius in 2010 keep that Obama Senate seat in 2010. So, maybe it's a fairy tale that we're supposed to forget about. It's our imagination that he actually said these things over and over and over and over again. Maybe that's the fairy tale. Maybe Will Smith, who's allegedly going to play him in a biopic one day, maybe he needs to come around with the Men in Black pen and flash that bulb in our eyes so we can forget the last 4 years of President Obama constantly telling us about keeping the plans that we like as Americans, keeping the doctors that we like as Americans, and that this legislation is not going to disrupt people that already have health insurance. You know, your feedback, I told you I always love hearing your feedback on Twitter, on Facebook, always vibe back and forth. Here's the thing, though. You know, as you listen to Kathleen Sebelius, the HHS secretary, say, blame it on me. Blame it on me. No, I'm not going to just blame it on her. As we listen to this, because the bottom line is, she didn't write this law. She shouldn't have written this law. She better not have written this law. That's not her role. That's not her job. She didn't write this law. She didn't get involved in the political maneuvering that allowed this law to pass in its current form. She is not the person that made all the backroom deals to get people to vote for a law that, generally speaking, they would not have voted for. And I'm talking about Democrats. Remember, there were not a bunch of backroom deals going between Republicans and Democrats on this. They were going between Democrats and Democrats. And you had to take even a small group of conservative Democratic congressmen at the 11th hour, led by Bart Stupak. And another concession had to be made, even though it was basically a cursory concession. But that was one of several concessions that had to be made in order to pass this law in its current form. I am not blaming Kathleen Sebelius, former governor of the state of Kansas, for this. I don't care what's going on at HHS, and I'm not even going to blame the technical consultants for the gaffes coming up with the website. The bottom line is this, and I know that some of you out there may disagree with this 100%. But I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway because I believe this is what it boils down to. When you have this type of leadership coming from the White House, and I said it yesterday, where there's this presidential plausible deniability going on from a political standpoint on anything and everything, where there's always a spin, where it's bad, it's extremely detrimental for the Obama administration in particular because he was voted on through trust more than anything else. He was not voted on because of a voting record, because he was senator present in a lot of instances throughout his career in how he voted. He had a reputation for avoiding controversial issues. People liked him, but they knew how to navigate the water so that if he had a chance to take this shot, he could take it and he could be clean. He was considered a blank slate. He was somebody that people could trust because he was supposed to be anti-Washington, post-partisan, post-racial, supposed to get us back on track, elevate the global esteem of the United States around the world, and get us to trust each other domestically once again. That is what President Obama was supposed to be starting January 20th, 2009. He was not voted into office because he had 20 years in the Senate. Heck, if you look at his record, he didn't even have 20 years in elected office. He started in elected office in 1997. Think about this. Within 11 years of being in elected office, he went from being a state senator that kicked off an incumbent state senator in order to win the election to being the president-elect of the United States of America. What else was he voted on? He was voted into office because of the promise of who he would be. From a trust standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from an accountability standpoint. That is the reason why he won his Nobel Peace Prize. Trust standpoint. Accountability standpoint. Bridge building. Peacemaking. Peace brokering. That is the whole essence of what Senator Obama, Democrat from Illinois, brought to the table more than anybody else. That's what he brought to the table. That's what made people vote for him in Iowa. Give him that early lead. Put Hillary Clinton in that deficit and disallow her from playing full catch-up. She would catch up in Pennsylvania, but couldn't catch up in another state. Couldn't catch up in South Carolina. But this back and forth where she never overcame the initial Obama lead. And that Obama lead in that 2008 primary was built off of trust for what he can bring moving forward. And now what do you see? You constantly see this president It wasn't me. It's not quite what I meant. Let me pivot my words. Let me be the quintessential Harvard lawyer. Now, I'm not trying to say that all Harvard lawyers are bad or all lawyers are bad, because I don't believe that's the case. But you know as well as I do that when people start dancing with words, and that's what he's doing. This is like something off of, ABC 7. Dancing with Words, the new show by the Obama White House, where you can basically go back and forth with what you mean, even though there's nothing but 4 straight years of you saying the same exact sound bite. If you like your doctor, under this healthcare law, you can keep your doctor. If you like your plan, under this healthcare law, you can keep your plan. Don't let people scare you into anything else. Don't let people scare you into voting away from me based on this, which is just simply not true. And he'd give you that wonderful smile, and you'd go from there. See, listen, I'm frustrated, and I'm frustrated with this, and I don't usually spend time on the podcast frustrated. Usually when you get, when I was doing my VON show, I could be a little frustrated, spend a little time being frustrated. I'm trying not to do that right now. But here's my point with all this. I'm frustrated because, number one, and we are going to have this heart-to-heart talk, ear-to-ear talk between the two big-eared black men, me here and him there, eventually. I'm sure he won't be listening, but I'll be talking. Here's the thing. One, you want your president to succeed. If the American president is successful in getting Americans to a higher place, a more prosperous place, a richness to their esteem, a deeper belief in the American dream, and more accessibility to the American dream for all, we win as a nation, regardless if that president's a Democrat or Republican. People love the 90s. They may not have loved Bill Clinton, but they love the money they made. They love the house they bought. They love the tech boom if they were able to buy into the .com expansion. People love the 90s because generally speaking, we weren't at war, and generally speaking, people were making money. And that was with Slick Willie, as they used to call him. That was with the Lewinsky scandal. So let's just be honest and direct. You want your American president to succeed. You may not want his policies, all one way or another way to succeed, but you want him to be a successful president, or one day you want her to be a successful president. That's not happening with President Obama. And the very things he was elected to do, fix the economy, elevate the global esteem, keep us safe at home. Heck, you had the Boston bombing last year, and you've had many other close calls. The underwear bomber, that was a malfunction. If he could have just done what he was supposed to do, that's a tragedy. 2009. Dallas, Times Square, 2010. We got bin Laden in 2011. We bragged about it as a country in 2012 at the Democratic National Convention. And then we had Benghazi. So that's an The signature piece of legislation from the Obama administration was a mishmash political arm wrestling exercise over the course of a year and a half that took a recount of a Senate election, flipping a senator, creating a supermajority, losing that supermajority, and then having to go through parliamentarian tricks in order to get it passed through the Senate so you can get passed through the House. That's how this got created. And then the Supreme Court had to consider it a tax and not consider it a mandate. Not consider it something that the government is forcing people to do. Had to consider it something else completely different. And then, after you see this, you see people can't keep their plans. You see people's work hours are getting cut. You see that jobs still aren't coming back to this economy. And the jobs that are here in the economy are service level jobs where people are trying to only keep their employees at 30, 35 hours a week to avoid Obamacare. Where the final rollout for what people have been looking forward to for months upon months upon months, with the Republicans tripping over themselves and fighting amongst themselves over how to deal with Obamacare. From the Ted Cruz shutdown to Peter King and others calling out Ted Cruz for the shutdown. In the shadows of all this, you have a website that doesn't work, a bureaucracy that's going to look worse, lies, innuendos, and a president saying, oh, I didn't know. You can't really hold me accountable for this. The whole purpose why this president was elected was because he would be the one that would change the tone. He would be the one that you could trust. Between the smile and the naivete going into Washington, he's new, fresh face, likable, post-racial, post-partisan, change we can believe in. What's changed? We still have the cronyism with the unions. We still have the hyper-partisanship. Now, granted, he faced some things, and I'll say this as I'm wrapping up. He faced some things with racism and the like that other presidents, obviously the other 43 were not African American, that he faced. But not all of it came from race. Some of this came from his own doing. And when it was time to say the buck stops here, it was either Hillary Clinton with the Benghazi hearings that we had in 2012, or Kathleen Sebelius today, or others. At what point in time does President Obama live up to the promise of trust, accountability, and bridge building that he campaigned on in 2008? Just my take. What is your take? You know where to find me on Twitter, LennyMcAllister. You know where to find me on Facebook. I'll always enjoy your feedback. Listen to the podcast while you're at work. Go click on the link on LennyMcAllister.com. Listen in, do your work, vibe with me on Facebook and on Twitter when you get a chance. And meanwhile, you enjoy the rest of your day. You know I love you. You know I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon. You have a great, great day. TCNGB. Take care and God bless.